Welcome back to Ethical Adulthood with Andrea Fiondo. Today we're in part two of The Old Map, a three-part exploration of the classical chakra system through a modern lens. So we'll call this part two, the heart chakra, the fulcrum of ethical adulthood. As I said last time, I'm not asking you to believe in chakras. I'm simply asking whether this old map still helps us understand human development. And today we arrive at the heart. I think this is the fulcrum of ethical adulthood. Let's dive in. In classical systems, the heart chakra, or anahata, is associated with the element of air and described as unstruck, a sound made not by collision or force. For me, air points not just to the breath and the biology of heart and lungs, but to exchange. Breath moves between bodies and environments without ownership. Trees release what we need, we release what they need, and life on the planet continues only through this mutual participation. You are not doing this life alone. And if you tried, you would quite literally die. The idea of unstruck matters here as well. It doesn't refer to the sound made by the striking of an instrument, but to the resonance that arises in the field itself. The vibration that appears neither from one source nor another, but from relationship. Harmonies appear only when two or more sounds converge. What the heart hears is not a single note or a dominant truth, but a harmony formed in awareness, something sensed beyond, beneath, around, and through ordinary perception. The heart does not force knowing. It receives through resonance, attunement, and deep listening. It is possible to live an entire life without ever fully occupying the center of the chest. The energy required to move to the heart is not a foregone conclusion or automatically available. It was that way between the centers in the lower triangle. Well, the heart is a capacity we all possess, but we don't all optimize. A person can survive, adapt, achieve, and even flourish according to external measures, while keeping the heart functionally offline. This is not even rare. In some advanced cultures, like those organized around advanced capitalism and corporate supremacy, it is rewarded with power, money, and fame. The lower triangle, root, sacral, and solar plexus, is capable of building impressive lives. It can secure safety, form identity, and generate power. It can create comfort, status, and influence. It can make a person somebody important. And still, something remains unfinished. The heart chakra, it's not the next rung on the ladder of spiritual attainment. It's the balancing point between the lower and upper triangles, the fulcrum on which the entire system turns. Without it, development becomes lopsided. Power accumulates without restraint. Insight becomes justification to act with impunity. Expression becomes a persona's daily performance. Meaning collapses into the ego's favorite, preferred ideology. Why isn't this progression to heart opening automatic? Well, because the heart is destabilizing to the lower triangle. It interferes with control, power, and the self's feelings of superiority, and the equation of survival with winning. Up to this point, development has been organized around a simple logic. If I do this right, I will be okay. If I manage my boundaries and trust no one, or only my closest relationships, I will not get hurt. The heart introduces a truth that cannot be negotiated with skill, intelligence, or effort. You can do everything right and still be called to sacrifice for your friends. You can secure your own needs and still be implicated in the suffering of others. You most assuredly can get hurt. Life introduces trauma to our bodies, minds, and environments at an alarming rate sometimes. The heart chakra isn't coming on board automatically because it threatens the lower triangle's favorite coping strategy, control. When life introduces trauma, the lower triangle reaches for certainty, numbing, rigid beliefs, winning, scapegoats, anything that promises safety. The heart interrupts that bargain by forcing contact with grief and tenderness. It asks us to let reality be real, to be changed by it, and to make significant changes in the way we negotiate ethics. This is not an easy option for many adolescents and adults. They've been certain about their foundations for a long time. The trauma has nearly broken them, and shifting to a heart-centered orientation does not feel safe. It feels like more trauma. So they do what the lower triangle knows how to do. They lean into the safety of certainty. Anger isn't assuaged by the heart. It is merely amplified by the third chakra. Or you can look like you're winning at life and still feel wrong. In fact, you can win a lot and feel like you lose over and over again because there's always someone better out there to make you feel vulnerable. And there are likely people out there who, without their tireless love for you, you would not know success. Both of these realities stop the process from ending cleanly at the solar plexus. But protection has a cost. At some point, usually after the lower triangle has done enough work to stabilize survival, selfhood, and agency, a person begins to recognize something previously dismissed as an insipid trope. All the books, all the movies, all the poems that they've been exposed to their entire life were telling the truth. Actually, love is the answer. And even here, as this recognition arrives, something in the self tightens. An eye roll begins. The lower triangle pushes back. Not because the recognition is false, but because it threatens those strategies that have kept the person safe. Well, the heart may be opening, but the solar plexus can still act to push it aside, if not derail it entirely. And then inevitably the question will follow. Well, now what's my question? The question is not how do I get ahead? The question is how do I live now that I can no longer justify organizing my life solely around my own comfort? That's the threshold of the heart. The heart chakra's developmental question is burdened by language. We use the word love to describe almost everything: romantic love, parental love, friendship, devotion, compassion, empathy, pleasure, preference, enthusiasm. We love pizza. We love symmetry. We love a good song. We love being in flow. All these experiences pass through the heart, but none of them capture its essence. Developmentally, the heart is not a feeling of love or devotion. Developmentally, it's not a feeling at all. It's a capacity. The capacity to widen the reference frame from me to us. The capacity to hold joy without the need to possess, and grief without the temptation to collapse. The capacity to give without guarantee. The capacity to act from care rather than fear. This is where conscience lives. Conscience is not moral purity or rule following. It is the felt recognition that one is participating in a shared reality where actions have consequences beyond the self. It is personal alignment or misalignment with what is true. When we act from alignment, from truth, and an ethical stance that aims to do no harm, there's less friction. When we act from misalignment, the pushback arrives as guilt. Conscience is the tuned instrument upon which we play our part. The heart is where a person begins to ask not only can I, but should I? Not out of obedience or a need to belong, but out of an honor for relationship. The heart learns what it can take in and what it can hold. How long it can stay present with suffering without numbing or fleeing. How to release control of outcomes while remaining committed to what is right. It develops an internal spaciousness, a house with a front and back door, through which attachment to results can leave, even as empathy and responsibility remain. Energy comes in through exchange, yes, but it also learns to exit, just as the body must exhale. The open heart chakra isn't a repository, it's a passageway. There's another way the heart announces itself, and it has nothing to do with virtue. It arrives as awe. Not the curated awe of spiritual language, and not the inspirational kind that resolves neatly into meaning. This is the sudden, destabilizing recognition that we are even here at all. The kind that brings tears without a reason. The kind that makes a person look up at the sky almost sheepishly and feel both very small and strangely centered at the same time. This is a difficult thing to write about without losing the more grounded readers, and I'm aware of that. Language around awe is often saturated with exaggeration, mysticism, and performance. It's easy to slip into grandiosity here, or into universe speak that asks the reader to swallow more than they may have experienced, or more than they can agree with. It's also easy to flatten the experience into sugary sentimentality, where it becomes meaningful only in a Disney sort of way. That frame may be true for some, but I'm aiming for a shared reality. So let me be precise. In these moments, the self doesn't expand, it quiets. The constant effort to secure, improve, justify, and protect loosens its grip. For a brief interval, the organizing question of the lower triangle, how do I make this work for me, falls away. And what replaces it isn't an answer, but a recognition. I am here, this is happening, and this is bigger than my strategies. People reach for mystical language here, even atheists, not because they've found a belief, but because they have encountered scale. Something vast enough to interrupt self-reference. Something that makes power and preference and accomplishment suddenly feel thin. This is not transcendence from reality. It is intimacy with reality. And here's the part that matters developmentally. Awe humbles the lower triangle without humiliating it. It doesn't shame the self or erase it. It simply reveals its limits. It shows in a way no argument ever could that no amount of control, competence, or certainty is sufficient to hold the fullness of existence. This is where love stops being an idea and becomes a necessity. Not romantic love, and not moral niceness, not virtual signaling, but love as the only orientation capable of holding this much reality without collapsing into fear or the false bravado that breeds denial of fear. The only stance that allows a person to remain open in the presence of beauty, grief, and meaning all at once. People do not move into ethical adulthood because they are persuaded. They move because they are touched by reality in a way their personal power cannot manage. That is the moment the heart takes the lead. Metaphorically, the Kundalini energy, that is our potential, moves up to the fulcrum and sets up house. From the standpoint of the lower triangle, love looks inefficient. It doesn't always pay off. It isn't reliably reciprocated. It can't be optimized. It asks for generosity when no reward is visible and restraint when power could easily be used. But from the standpoint of ethical adulthood, love is the only orientation that works. Joy at this stage no longer comes primarily from acquisition or achievement. It comes from participation, from offering one's talents, wisdom, labor, attention, creativity, and care freely, without degradation, without superiority, without erasing the self. Joy arises when a person's gifts are in circulation, when their presence makes the world even slightly more livable for others. This is what the heart teaches, that life is not here to meet my preferences. It is here to be met. That the world is not a proving ground for becoming somebody important, but a shared field in which all beings are attempting imperfectly to live. The heart does not reject the self, it situates it. The self becomes one participant among many, unique, necessary, and limited, capable of harm and capable of repair, responsible not only for personal success, but for the quality of the shared space it helps create. This is where restraint enters, not as repression, but as wisdom. The recognition that not every power should be used, not every desire should be pursued, not every victory is worth the cost. The heart does not abolish power. It teaches power where to stop. And this is why the upper triangle cannot be entered cleanly without the heart. Insight without conscience becomes rationalization. Expression without care becomes manipulation. Meaning without love becomes ideology. The higher centers amplify whatever orientation they are fed. If the heart is bypassed, they will amplify fear, dominance, and certainty. The heart is the gatekeeper. It ensures that what rises upward is in right relationship with life itself. This is the work of ethical adulthood. To act from love without guarantees, to take responsibility without domination, and to give freely without erasing oneself, and to live in a way that does not turn one's life against life itself. And for many people, this work begins not with certainty, but with a quiet, unmistakable knowing. This matters more than my defenses. Thanks for listening. This is Andrea Fiondo. I'll see you next time for part 3. And for many people, this work begins not with certainty, but with a quiet, unmistakable knowing. This matters more than my defenses. Thanks for listening. This is Andrea Fiondo. I'll see you next time for part 3. And for many people, this work begins not with certainty, but with a quiet, unmistakable knowing. This matters more than my defenses. Thanks for listening. This is Andrea Fiondo. I'll see you next time for part 3.